Hello and welcome to the Voice of Iron. And in this session, I'll be reading and ranting about the Marauder Heavy Battlemech. First, I'll be going over the canon information that we have from SARNA, and then I'll be giving my personal thoughts on this mech. Description: the Marauder was first built by General Motors in 2612 for use as an attack and direct fire support battlemech. The Marauder was one of the most well-known mechs in existence, and originally meant to usher in a new generation of mechs. Unfortunately, with the fall of the Star League, this new generation never quite materialized. On its own merits, though, the Marauder was a devastatingly powerful mech, outclassed only by larger machines like the Stalker and Battlemaster. During the years of the Star League, the Marauder was a favorite of the Gunslinger program thanks to its tremendous firepower, while its advanced electronics endeared it to many battalion and regimental commanders. On the hellish battlefields of the Succession Wars, massed formations of Marauders proved devastating as shock units in breaking through enemy lines. However, the rarity of these mechs, House Liao only fielded several hundred Marauders total in 2828, often meant that they had to be paired with other similar mechs, such as the Warhammer and Thunderbolt. When the Helm Memory Core was recovered, the Marauder was an obvious candidate for Lost Tech upgrades. House Davion were among the first to field an updated variant, but their eagerness backfired when House Kurita captured Quinton and its Marauder factory in the War of 3039. With the Kuritans in possession of this first variant, the Federated Commonwealth decided to build a second using a different configuration. Other Lost Tech-inspired variants were also built in time for the Clan invasion. A second revitalization of the Marauder occurred at the hands of the Capellan Confederation, though notably they had never before built the mech themselves. On behalf of Series Metal Industries, the Chancellor himself, Sun Tzu Liao, negotiated a deal to acquire the design from General Motors in exchange for allowing Hildco Interplanetary to resume exporting its products to the Federated Suns. While a success, disturbing rumors from the periphery reported a number of these seemingly backwater realms fielding updated Marauders of their own, with origins suspected to be of a sinister nature. Weapons and equipment. Standing at 12 meters tall, the MAD-3R Marauder carried a payload dedicated to long-range firepower in the form of two Magna Hellstar PPCs and a General Motors Whirlwind Autocannon 5. These three weapons all had similar range profiles that allowed the Marauder to use them to their maximum effect at long ranges. The PPCs were carried in armored gauntlets, matching the same configuration as the Warhammer, but the arm's versatile ball and socket joints provided a faster traverse rate and a superior field of fire. Compact enough to be carried in the arms, the Hellstar PPCs were also durable enough to withstand heavy hand-to-hand combat, allowing the Marauder to bludgeon opponents into scrap. Firing a 3-round burst of 120mm shells, the autocannon was mounted atop the right torso and fed by a center torso magazine with enough ammo for 20 bursts. Added as an afterthought, its connection to the main chassis was tenuous, and a successful hit could easily disable the system, while the gun itself was often temperamental. If the enemy was able to close the range, the Marauder could rely on its two Magna Mark II medium lasers, also mounted in the gauntlets, which provided adequate defense against other mechs. The once unique silhouette of the Marauder made it much harder to target than the more common humanoid models. It also originally carried 11.5 tons of special, valiant, lamellar armor, which was superior at distributing kinetic and thermal energy and less massive than other standard armored types. As the knowledge for its manufacture was lost, though, many Marauders became a patchwork quilt as sections were damaged and had to be replaced. 16 heat sinks easily allowed a competent Mechwarrior to keep their waste heat under control, while a powerful 19-ton fusion engine gave it a decent cruising speed of 43.2 kilometers per hour. The Marauder was not without its flaws, potent though it was. In addition to the weak linkage between its autocannon and chassis, the rotation rings connecting the chassis with the leg assemblies was a similar weak point in the design. Many Marauder pilots took to mounting improvised armoring around these points in an attempt to protect these vulnerabilities. The powerful high-res tracking system, located in the forward section of the mech, was also known for impeding the pilot's field of view. Variants. The MAD-3R. The earliest version of the Marauder, used by the Royal Brigades of the SLDF, the 1R used case to protect the autocannon ammunition and carried 11 tons of ferrofibrous armor. It was introduced in 2612. The MAD-2R. This upgrade of the 1R eventually replaced it in 2760. The PPCs were upgraded to ER PPCs, necessitating a similar upgrade of the heatsinks to double heatsinks. The MAD-2T. A Taurian Concordat version of the Royal Marauder that swaps the standard autocannon for an LB-5X. The standard medium lasers in both arms are replaced with the corresponding ER version. The MAD-3D. The 3D Marauder was a modification of the mech introduced for House Davian in 2834, which removed the ammunition dependency. In order to do this, the 3D replaced the autocannon 5 with a large laser. The saved weight was used to add 4 more heatsinks to the mech to handle the added heat burden from the large laser. The MAD-3L. Built for House Liao in 2905, the 3L attempted to make the Marauder more heat efficient by replacing one of the arm-mounted particle cannons with a large laser, though this reportedly caused problems with the targeting system, which no one alive understood anymore as of 3025. Additionally, 2 more heat sinks were added to further increase the Marauder's heat efficiency. The MAD-3M was introduced in 2873 specifically for the Free Worlds League. Because of the abundance of large lasers built by that realm, and to make up for their shortage of reliable PPCs, the 3M model carried 2 large lasers in place of the PPCs. While running cooler than the weapons they replaced, the large lasers also caused slightly less damage. Additionally, the 3M added 4 heatsinks to the design, making the mech much more manageable for pilots who have trouble with overheating their mechs. The MAD-4X. This experimental variant was made at Ronin Incorporated's facility on Wallace in 3039, under the supervision of engineer Arlo Fenster. Techs removed the standard weaponry from a Marauder and replaced the arm-mounted weapons with a binary laser cannon in each arm, while the torso-mounted autocannon was replaced by twin SRM-6 launchers backed by 1 ton of ammunition for each launcher. The Marauder 4X was also noteworthy because it used a prototype endo-steel chassis. To keep the heat under control, technicians installed 12 single heatsinks and 6 prototype double heatsinks. The MAD-5CS. Developed by Comstar for the Battle of Tukaid, this Marauder variant is a fairly simplistic upgrade to allow MAD-3R pilots to readily adapt to. The MAD-5CS has a Magna Support ER-PPC and Aberdovi medium pulse laser in each arm weapon pod, while the Class 5 autocannon is replaced by a Lupulin LB-10X autocannon with 2 tons of ammunition. To make room for the new weapons and 18 double heatsinks, Comstar techs installed a Velar 300XL engine from the Clanbuster cache. The MAD-5D. The 5D Marauder was the first updated variant to be designed in the wake of the Helm Memory Core recovery, coming off the factory lines in 3047. A direct upgrade of the 3D model, the 5D's engine was replaced with a General Motors 300XL engine, retaining the same speed profile at a much reduced weight to allow the entire weapons payload to be stripped out and upgraded. The 5D's primary weapons were 2 Defiance 1001 ER-PPCs carried in either arm, supported by a Sutel Precision Line large pulse laser in place of the autocannon. The medium lasers were replaced with 2 Sutel Precision Line medium pulse lasers, while a Federated Super Streak SRM-2 launcher was also added to the left torso, along with 1 ton of case-protected ammo, for more close-range firepower. The model was protected by 14 tons of armor, mostly added to the legs and side torsos, and carried 16 double heat sinks for heat management. It also had a jumping capability of up to 120 meters thanks to 4 jump jets mounted in its legs. When the Caretans captured Quinton, Independence Weaponry began building the 5D to augment their forces. Though unwilling to completely let go of the design, General Motors also built the 5D for FedCom forces out of Cthulhu. The MAD-5D DC. The 5D DC strips out the streak launcher, ammunition, case, and 1 heatsink from a Marauder 5D to make room for a command console. The MAD-5L variant of the mech was the first natively produced Marauder variant for the Capellan Confederation. Introduced in early July 3067 and built at the Ceres metal factories on Warlock and Capella, the 5L removed the entire weapons payload of the original and upgraded its weapons, armor, and heatsinks. Built on a Ceres Metals light chassis with a Rawlings 300 fusion engine, the mech was armored with 14 tons of Ceres heavy stealth armor, backed up by a Guardian ECM suite. The mech carried 2 Martel ER large lasers and 2 Ceres Arms ER medium lasers in its arms, and, in place of the autocannon, a Ceres Arms Warrior ER PPC. The heat from the 5L's all-energy arsenal was handled by 18 double heatsinks. Additionally, the 5L was built using triple-strength Myomer, allowing the mech to run at speeds of up to 86 km per hour when it was operating in its optimum heat range. The electronics were also replaced with a Ceres Metals Model 666 comm system and Ceres Bullseye tracking system. The MAD-5M variant of the Marauder was introduced in 3051 by Ronin Incorporated and Free Worlds Defense Industries for the Free Worlds League. Compared to the original, it replaced the standard fusion engine with an XL engine and completely rearmed the mech with recovered Star League-era weapons. The primary weapons were 2 Tronel PPL-20 large pulse lasers, backed up by 2 Magna 400P medium pulse lasers in either arm. Finally, in place of the autocannon 5, the 5M carried an Oriente Model O LB-10X autocannon. The 5M had a jumping distance of up to 120 meters, thanks to 4 jump jets mounted in the legs, and carried 16 double heatsinks. 1 ton of ammunition for the LB-10X AC was carried in the left torso and protected by case. The MAD-5R. The Marauder 5R was an upgrade of the 3R model introduced in 3068. The mech carried an XL engine to save weight, and its heatsinks upgraded to double-strength models. The PPCs were replaced with 2 ER PPCs, and the autocannon 5 upgraded to a rotary autocannon 5. The 2 medium lasers of the original were retained. Also, for added protection, the 5R mounted 14 tons of armor and a Guardian ECM suite. The mech also carries a C3 slave unit that allows the mech to transmit targeting data to its lancemates. The MAD-5S. The 5S variant of the Marauder dates to the clan invasion, introduced in 3051 by Bowie Industries after the Draconis Combine captured plans for the 5D design. The variant was built around an XL engine to save weight and upgraded the heatsinks to double-strength models. Like the 5D, the 5S carried ER PPCs and medium pulse lasers, but replaced the autocannon with a Poland Main Model A Gauss rifle. 1 ton of ammunition for this powerful long-ranged weapon was carried in the left torso. The MAD-5T variant of the Marauder featured elements of both the 5M and 5R models when it was introduced in 3068. The 5T was built around an endo steel chassis and an XL engine to save weight. The mech carries as its primary weapons 2 large pulse lasers, backed up by 2 medium pulse lasers, and a rotary autocannon 5 in the torso mount. The weapons were all linked to an advanced targeting computer, making the 5T incredibly accurate. Finally, the 5T is protected by 14 tons of armor. The MAD-6L. An upgrade of the 5L introduced in 3070, the 6L replaced the lasers with a pair of Series Arms Crusher plasma rifles. The particle cannon was also downgraded to a standard Hellstar PPC. The stealth armor and attendant Guardian ECM suite and triple-strength myarmors were retained, though 3 less double heatsinks were used. The MAD-3R. This Marauder variant carries an ER PPC and medium X pulse laser in each arm. The torso cannon is a light Gauss rifle protected by Case 2 and 1 ton of ammunition. A C3 slave module is in the head, and a Guardian ECM suite is in the right torso. The MAD-7D. Another Davian upgrade to the Marauder, the 7D was built in 3068 with an XL engine to save weight. The mech was armed with 2 ER large lasers and 2 ER medium lasers, as well as a rotary autocannon 5. These were all linked to a targeting computer, making the 7D extremely accurate. The mech also carried an ECM suite for protection against electronic warfare equipment and was armored with 14 tons of armor. The MAD-7M. Developed in the Free Worlds League during the Jihad, this derivative of the 5M carries a heavy PPC and ER medium laser in each arm. The dorsal cannon is reduced to an LB5X with a ton of ammunition protected by Case. It has 15 double heatsinks and retains the 120-meter jump radius of the 5M. The MAD-3R. This Marauder variant is nearly identical to the MAD-3C in that it carries an ER PPC and medium X-pulse laser in each arm. The torso cannon is a light Gauss rifle protected by Case 2. It retains the Guardian ECM suite, but the C3 slave module has been replaced by an additional ton of light Gauss rifle ammunition, providing 32 shots. The MAD-7S. Like the 7C, this Lyran Commonwealth version has an ER PPC and medium X pulse laser in each arm. The torso cannon is a Gauss rifle protected by Case 2. 2 tons of Gauss rifle ammunition are carried. The MAD-9D. Just skipping 8, I guess. Introduced during the Dark Age, this version of the Marauder carried a clan-built ER large laser in each arm, supported by a medium X-pulse laser. A silver bullet Gauss rifle replaced the old autocannon. To handle the heat load, the 9D carries 16 double heatsinks mated to a radical heatsink system. To provide weight for all the weapons and equipment, engineers had to use an endo-composite skeleton, XL engine, and XL gyro. The MAD-9M. A departure from the standard Marauder design philosophy, the 3068 9M is built using an XL engine and 12.5 tons of Valiant chainmail ferrofibrous armor. The mech carries, as its primary weapons, 4 ER large lasers for long-range combat. In the event that the mech closes, it has 2 Guided Technologies 2nd generation Streak SRM-6 launchers. The 9M also carries TAG to designate targets, for Arrow 4 artillery strikes, and an ECM suite for protecting against electronic warfare systems. The MAD-9M2 upgrade of the 9M replaces the lasers with a pair of Magnus Supernova heavy PPCs. The MAD-9S Marauder was built in 3068 with a light fusion engine and an endosteel chassis to save weight. The 9S also used double heatsinks to handle its heat-intensive weapons payload. The 9S carried 2 ER PPCs in its primary weapon slot, as well as an LB-10X autocannon for long-range combat. For close ranges, the 9S was equipped with 2 ER medium lasers and a flamer. The 9S was also equipped with exceptional electronic systems, including an ECM suite and a Beagle active probe. The MAD-9W. This Blakist design carried an ER large laser and medium pulse laser in each arm, backed up by a snub-nose PPC in the torso. 5 improved jump jets allowed it to cover 150 meters at a time, while the improved C3 computer could share targeting data with friendly units. To make room for these improvements, it used a light fusion engine, while a heavy-duty gyro provided significant protection against battlefield damage. The MAD-9W2, was based on captured Word of Blake plans formerly owned by Vicor Industries, and it carried twin ER large lasers and medium pulse lasers supported by a single snub-nose PPC. To offset a lower top speed, this Marauder mounted 5 improved jump jets, a heavy-duty gyro enhanced battlefield longevity, while a Guardian ECM suite and C3 slave maximized its electronics performance. A light fusion engine provided weight savings to allow all these upgrades. The MAD-11D, introduced by the Federated Suns, this Marauder uses an endo-composite skeleton, XL gyro, and XL engine to free weight. A clan spec ERPPC is in each arm, supported by a medium X-pulse laser. A silver bullet Gauss rifle with 2 tons of ammunition is protected by Case 2. 17 double heat sinks keep the weapon heat under control. And finally, the Marauder C. Intended for use by 2nd Line, Garrison, and Saloma forces, the clans replaced some of the inner sphere weaponry of Marauders captured during Operation Revival with clan equivalents. The PPCs were swapped for a pair of Clan Tech large pulse lasers and the standard autocannon for an Ultra AC-5 model, with the single ton of ammunition protected by Case. The inner sphere medium lasers were left in place, as were the single heatsinks. Dual cockpit refits were common. The Marauder was one of the Free Worlds League's preferred mechs to install dual cockpits. Standard refits usually install the dual cockpits on a MAD-3M or a MAD-5D, removing 1 heatsink. And finally, all Marauders, unless otherwise stated, have the following design quirks. They're command battlemechs. They have a directional torso mount on the right torso for that cannon, hyper-extending actuators for the arms. It's got a narrow, low profile because of its unique shape, but it does have an exposed weapon linkage for that AC-5. All Marauders have that particular series of issues, except for the MAD-4X Marauder, which had a combat computer, a cramped cockpit. It was difficult to maintain. It had improved cooling jackets for those binary lasers it installed, but it had no ejection system. I normally don't go over the related Battlemechs, but there was a line earlier on that mentioned in its history that the Marauder was supposed to usher in a new age of Battlemechs, or a particular type of Battlemechs, and just seeing all the derivatives that come from the general design philosophy might help in seeing that. For instance, the Bandersnatch was modeled after it in some way. The Dragonfire was a series of Star League-era Marauder series Battlemechs that never quite reached full-scale production. It was basically a ballistic variant of the Marauder in terms of the idea. The Maelstrom was, again, one of the Star League-era Marauder series Battlemechs that maintained a heavy array of energy weapons, highlighted by ERPPCs, but it also mounted TAG. The Marauder 2 and the Marauder 2C, which came way later, of course, but nonetheless showed that the design philosophy could be upscaled significantly. The Nightstar, which is a wonderful machine, it's got a general shape much like a Marauder, except it's an assault mech, and it carries 2 Gauss rifles instead of PPCs. The Omni Marauder was a product in the 3100s that just showed that you could turn the whole thing into an Omni mech if you really wanted to. The Rakshasa and the Timberwolf both take a lot of design elements from that Marauder style of mech. It's nice to see that they really thought about, hey, what are the consequences of making such a good general mech design? Because other people are going to try and copy that general sort of silhouette. And now, personal notes. So when it comes to the Marauder, it's one of the original iconic battlemechs of the Battletech universe. It's got a very interesting history. It was one of the infamously unseen mechs for a while, because the original design for the Marauder was taken, if I remember correctly, from Macross. More specifically, the art. The lore, the in-universe writing, the weaponry, all of that was, of course, written entirely in-house, but the original art that it was based on was legally purchased from, I believe, Harmony Gold was the company. but they later found out that Harmony Gold didn't actually own the rights to that particular design or that art, and so it and a lot of the other art that was bought from them kind of had to be scrapped and redesigned. Now, they did redesign it in a way that courts have ruled is completely different, or at least different enough to where it does not resemble enough the original product. And personally, I do quite like the redesign. It feels heavier, it feels like more of a military piece of equipment. Not to say that there isn't charm to the original design, but that's a whole other debate. In short, it is a classic design that comes from the very, very beginning of Battletech and Mechwarrior, and it has aged very, very well. It's well designed. I mean, 2 PPCs is definitely nothing to sneeze at. They have good range, they have incredible damage, and that goes for the tabletop, the video games, all of it. The AC5 matches it for range, even if it's just 5 damage for plink, and of course medium lasers, never something to sneeze at when it comes up, with decent armor. So, like, the Warhammer can outgun this thing, but this thing can survive much, much, much longer than a Warhammer. Now, I've had the luxury of being able to drive a Marauder for an extended period of time. I'll get to my personal modifications in a minute, but taking them out stock, the original MAD-3R, I was pleasantly surprised to see that AC5 is pretty useful as a low heat, good range, decent firepower weapon. If I'm ever starting to kind of run my heat hot by blasting things with a PPC, I can cool down and just let out a couple of salvos with the AC5 just to keep the damage up on the enemy, while at the same time allowing the PPCs to rest for a minute. But at the same time, you know, if something gets close enough, the medium lasers are going to help to pepper it to death before the PPCs finish it off. I mean, it moves at tactical speed, so you're not going to be winning any races anytime soon, and lack of jump jets, at least in the base model, definitely means you're going to be just walking in formation with most people. But the nice thing about this is, unless you're in close quarters, you have the ability to just stand off at a distance and obliterate people before they even get a chance to fire back. Basically, you can destroy brawler mechs before they can even get within weapon range for their primary weapons, while yours are good to go. Now, the MAD-2R is something that I've also taken out, and it has great direct fire and sniping capabilities. Everything that I just said about being able to stay off at a distance, even more so with the MAD-2R, with those twin ER PPCs. It's solid. But of course, the MAD-2R as a downside overheats very, very fast. And then on top of that, especially during the Succession Wars, if you lose one of those double heat sinks in a single battle, you're not going to have nearly the heat capacity necessary to use this thing regularly. It's still good as a sniper, but you're not going to be getting nearly the rate of fire that you would have in the original off-the-factory 2R design. Also, if something gets in close quarters with the 2R, I have a lot of difficulty managing to keep up the heat. I have to have a lot of my allies come in and kind of rescue me if something manages to sneak up on me. So, other than, like, trying to point blank a light mech or something, if a medium gets within range, that's a problem. Now, in terms of the weapon spread and my kind of personal preferences, I do want to say that I think Davian had the right idea replacing that AC5. As pleasantly surprised as I was to have that low heat option, the ammunition was a problem for me, and I'm not going to lie, the AC5, even one, being able to run out of ammo, and two, having explosive ammunition to begin with, not to mention that on the tabletop those exposed linkages kind of make it a liability. So the 3D that replaces that with a large laser, I like a lot. It's of course, at least this might just be the video game, but it's fixed, so a lot more direct fire, just straightforward, and it's not got nearly the same range as, say, the PPCs do, but having the large laser, which, other than managing your heat, you don't have to worry about ammunition, you don't have to worry about explosions or anything like that. Having that extra damage on top of your PPCs, I mean, on the tabletop, it's 10 and 10 for the PPCs each, and then 8 for the large laser. That's very, very good. But my personal recommendation, and this has downsides, I'm going to admit that, but my personal recommendation would be to actually just entirely remove the torso-mounted big weapon. I know. If you lose both arms, then you're basically dead in the water. I get that, but this thing's primary punching power comes from those PPCs. Having the extra weight of an additional weapon up top can be useful. Large laser or an AC-5 can definitely help, especially if your arms are gone, but you can get a much higher rate of fire, much more reliable damage from this thing if you just go ahead and replace the weight that was that extra weapon with more heat sinks, additional armor, that sort of thing. So having a Marauder with no carapace-mounted weapon, which the tabletop indicates is in the right torso, but all of the models, for the most part, seem to show is on the exact center line. Maybe that's just where everything feeds from. Regardless, I think that replacing that tonnage with extra heat sinks and additional armor, if need be, is a lot more beneficial to the Marauder as a whole for its intended purpose of this heavy, long-range PPC delivery platform. Plus, keeping those medium lasers in the arms allows you to help keep up the damage if something gets close. Alternatively, if you don't like that idea, if you're dead set on keeping the carapace weapon, just strip out the 2 medium lasers and replace them with 2 additional heat sinks. It'll at the very least help your heat management, while at the same time keeping up your long-range sort of profile. Now, in the tabletop, that's going to go a little poorer because there is a minimum range for the PPCs, but at least in the video games, that's not necessarily as big of a problem. I mean, technically, on the tabletop, you can also fire them point blank, you just have a lot of negatives, and the video game just kind of writes that off as there's a lot of disruption if you fire it at close range, but I'm getting lost in the sauce here. The point is, the Marauder's a very good platform that is built almost entirely around its energy payload. I had a buddy of mine ask if there was a ballistics-focused version of this thing, and I believe, again, in-universe, someone did make such a thing based on that idea. It was the... let me see here. Bandersnatch. That was the ballistics-focused version of this. And I'm not gonna lie, the idea of having this kind of, like, low-profile, heavy mech with ball-joint arms that has great range of motion and, you know, durable weapon pods in the front while still being able to kind of keep up with everything. It's a smart idea. I very much think that it lends itself well to all sorts of, shall I say, like, pair weapon platforms. Like, I haven't covered the King Crab yet, but you can kind of see the general philosophy. I've got 2 models right here. They both kind of have the reverse-facing chicken legs. They both have 2 primary weapons in either arm and an armored pod. They both have a low profile for how heavy they are. Heck, they both have carapace-mounted weapons. I'm surprised the King Crab wasn't listed in Inspired Mechs and the Marauder. Looking at them side by side, they're actually quite similar. Anyway, all of that to say that the Marauder's profile lends itself well to all sorts of sort of durable dual weapon position platforms. The Night Star, definitely want a model of that at some point because it is a lot of fun. It's the most fun you can have with Gauss rifles before the Fafnir, my favorite mech, comes into the picture. But regardless, I think that kind of prioritizing that definitely makes it a lot more useful to the pilot who's trying to use that to the fullest. But again, I mean, that comes with downsides. That's one of the things I like about mech design is every time you come up with a quote-unquote improvement, it comes at some drawback, and I very much appreciate that about this game. Anyway, I got a buddy of mine who swears by the Marauder, for good reason. It's a very, very good mech, and he takes it out whenever he possibly can. But to the same degree, I actually had a recent event where we had someone who was relatively new, you know, kind of a green pilot with us. He'd gotten in a little bit of time in Mechwarrior, but not too much. And looking at the various mechs that we could give him to kind of, you know, help us in a higher tier mission, because he was joining us in the middle of a war, while at the same time not necessarily being overwhelming, we looked to the Marauder. Not having to worry about ammunition for those primary weapons, giving him the ability to be a lot more survivable than something like a Warhammer, while at the same time mostly just having to worry about, you know, 3 or even 2 weapon groups, depending on how we configured it. It just made sense to give him the Marauder, and he did great with it. I hadn't really thought about this until we let him give it a go. The Marauder is great for people who are new to Battletech. It definitely trains you how to manage your heat, while at the same time making it to where your ammunition management isn't nearly as important to your effectiveness, because, hey, those PPCs are going to be your main damage dealers, and it gives you the ability to stay back and let some of your allies move forward and screen you in the event that you have to because of those PPCs. So it's great for beginners. Veterans love it. I love this thing. And there's a lot of variants that come out of this general design that I very much enjoy. I hope to cover the Marauder 2 at some point soon because, man, is it a cool machine. I've driven both the Marauder and the Marauder 2, and I'll say this much. Every time in the Succession Wars that I see a Marauder 2, I get a little scared. Not just because that clearly means that they beat or are friends with the Wolf's Dragoons, or just are the Wolf's Dragoons, up until the clan invasion, because that's the only way you're getting one of these, is if you beat them or if you buy it from them. But also, it takes everything that I just said about the Marauder in terms of like, oh, it's great at distance sniping, it's very survivable, and it goes ahead and makes it even more survivable, a little more heat efficient, even more durable, even more damaging. Oh, and it can jump. The only area in which it's worse is it's slower. But it's a 100-ton assault mech. Of course it's slower. You know, that's a scary machine. But I'm not here talking about the Marauder 2. I'm here talking about the Marauder. And so, as much as I've kind of incoherently rambled back and forth, I suppose in conclusion, I can say this. It's a good mech for beginners. It's a great mech for people who have experience with it. You can mix and match a lot of the peripherals on this thing as long as it's still built around a twin energy weapon payload, and it still feels like the same sort of mech. And overall, personal opinion, the model looks really cool. Like, whether it be in MechWarrior 5 or the new plastic models, the Rescene models, I believe they're called, they're very, very cool. And the original does very much have its charm. It's just that the original, the original Unseen model can't be used by Catalyst, so it's a bit of a shame. But regardless, I like the Marauder. I think I come away with most of these personal notes by saying I like whatever it is, but no, really, like, I've driven this thing repeatedly. I will continue to drive this thing repeatedly whenever I need something within that weight bracket. And I highly recommend it to both beginners and veterans because there's always something that you can do with this thing. There's very few lances, with the exception of maybe scout lances or heavily mobile lances. There's very few lances that wouldn't benefit from having a Marauder on their team. Anyway, that concludes my reading and ranting about the Marauder, and thank you for listening to my voice.